wanted to be a member of the royal family. I've always wanted to be part of the royal family because there are great advantages to being royal. If you're royal, whatever you do is very interesting. Whatever you do, people are very interested in it. Even if you do something very boring, people are still very interested in it. If a royal person does something extremely boring, people say, oh, isn't it interesting that he's doing something extremely boring? If I do something extremely boring, people say, oh, how extremely boring. It's not so good. You never get newspaper cuttings about me. You never see headlines saying E.L. Wisty was looking radiant as he got off the 17A bus in Hounslow. You don't see pictures saying E.L. Wisty was looking tense but dignified as he entered the municipal baths. You don't get that sort of treatment. And another wonderful thing about being royal is that people get interested in what you're interested in. That's how the corgis have caught on, you see. Everybody loves a corgi because the royal people are connected with them. I think newts have had a very hard time. If I was a royal person, I think I'd patronise the newts. They're lovely little creatures, newts, you know. They're not as cuddly as corgis, of course. You don't nestle up to a newt as you would to a corgi, but they're lovely things. I'd have whole packs of royal newts wandering about the palace gardens, and I'd be seen with them the whole time. And I'd create a special post called Royal Master of the Newts, the Lord High Newter. And he'd have to walk about with a golden stick, you see, tapping the ground continuously and saying, Newtati, Newtati. Let the world bring forth newts in abundance. And then I think we see an end to the corgis and the beginning of the newts. Of course, there are disadvantages to being royal. Everybody has to come in backwards, you see. That's a disadvantage. They have to come in and go out backwards if they're in the royal presence. That's why you only see royalty dancing with royalty. They can't dance with ordinary people unless they're back to back with them, you see. And that's never really caught on, that sort of thing. Of course, if you're royal, it's wonderful to be able to tell royal jokes. That's very wonderful. You always get a good laugh if you tell a royal joke. I'd tell lots of royal jokes if I was royal. For example, if somebody gave me a wonderful silver newt container, a newt casket, I'd say, thank you very much indeed for this wonderful gift of a newt casket. I hope it's not going to be a bloody nuisance. Oh, all of England would be chuckling if I said that. And that's the point of royalty, to make people a tiny bit happier in this drab life. We've all got royal blood in our veins, you know. It's the best place for it, in my view. We've all got a little bit of royal blood in our veins. We're all in line for the succession. And if 19,400,208 people die, I'll be king tomorrow. It's not very likely, but it's a nice thought and helps keep you going. I've always wanted to be an expert on tadpoles. I've always fancied being a tadpole expert. It's a wonderful life if you become an experti tadpolius, as they're known in the trade. You get invited out to all the smart parties and social gatherings. When smart people are making out their list for the dinner parties, they say, now who can we have to make up the 10? A tadpole expert would be very nice. He could sit next to Lady Sonia. And at all the smart functions, people come up to you and say, I hear you're a tadpole expert. Tell me, what are tadpoles really like? And lovely ladies invite you back to their flat and say, you know, I'm longing to hear about your tadpoles. Hang on a a minute while I slip into a gossamer trench coat. I've tried over the years to become a tadpole expert, actually. I've studied the tadpole and attempted to learn everything about them. There isn't very much to learn, actually. The main thing to learn is that there are two kinds of tadpoles. There's the ones that turn into the frogs and the ones that turn into the toads. I call them the toadpole and the frogpole. Now, the only way to distinguish between the two is that the toadpole tends to turn into a toad, whereas the frogpole will tend to turn into a frog. But there's no way that I've found of predicting this. Of course, tadpoles are lovely little creatures, aren't they? They're so good-natured, and they have such lovely little smiles. It's very hard to see their little smiles, actually, because they're black all over, and they have little black mouths, and the insides of their mouths are black as well. And so when they smile, it's just a little black blob. You can't really tell when they're smiling. They make lovely pets, you know, the tadpole, very faithful. The only trouble is, as soon as you get to know them properly and they start doing tricks and things and they can answer to their name, they turn into horrible toads and frogs. I can't abide toads and frogs, horrible slimy creatures that go around eating flies and laying their slime all over the place. Such a pity when you think of the lovely little tadpoles wiggling about in the jar. I used to keep tadpoles in a jar by my bedside when I was studying to be a tadpole expert. Lovely little things squiggling about. That wasn't until I had the tragedy. I had a terrible tragedy. I had three lovely little tadpoles in my jar, Deirdre, Margaret and Beryl. Lovely little things, and I switched the light out last thing at night, and I must have had a very violent dream about gossamer trench coats or something. Because when I woke up in the morning, there they were, strewn all over my pillow, all dried up like three little raisins. I tried to revive them by throwing water all over them, but it was too late. They just went into soggy little raisins. Horrible, soggy little black raisins. Tragic business. Deirdre was just getting her first legs too. But I suppose it was all for the best. They'd only have turned into ghastly old toads and frogs in the end and left me. It's rather a thankless life being a tadpole expert.